Hi, everybody. Mike here. Besides this YouTube channel, I don't know how many of you are aware that we also do a weekly podcast. It's called the RV Podcast. In fact, this is going on our 6th year of doing the podcast. And each week we interview movers and shakers in the RV industry and interesting people and folks who can help us as we travel the country in an RV. Well, we're going to play you one right now that is on episode 244 of the podcast. And from now on, we're going to try and include video versions of as many of those interviews as we can. I want to remind you to subscribe to the RV Podcast. Just look for your favorite app, whatever app you use to listen to podcasts, and search under RV Podcast, and you'll find us, and then you'll get it when it comes out every Wednesday. But we're going to try and put these videos out as well as we do our interviews. And I think today you're going to enjoy this interview particularly. It's with Chris and Cherie, who are probably the top experts when it comes to internet connectivity for on-the-go RVers. They're going to help us work through all of the many different options that are available. And I think you're going to find a lot of helpful information as you begin your summer travels. So let's go to the podcast interview. Well, joining us now from their boat in just off Brunswick, Georgia, is Chris and Cherie. You guys, thank you so much for being with us, and it's good to have you back.
Yeah, it's been a while. It's always a pleasure.
So let's start with some of the changes that have probably happened in the connectivity world that affect RVers and I guess boaters too, but particularly RVers. That's majorly our audience. They all want to know what's the best solution for them. And of course, we all know that it depends on what your circumstances are. But walk us through what RVers need to consider as they look at maybe upgrading the way they stay connected to the internet while they are on the road.
Well, the first thing you have to do and absolutely understand is that what works best is what works best at your current location. And that's a variable for us RVers. We're always moving our locations. Our houses have wheels. So what works today while you're in one location may not be the best choice when you get to your next location. So if mobile internet is important to you, we think it's very important to have multiple options on board. So a lot of us are relying on cellular these days. Or having data plans on AT&T and Verizon tend to be the top 2 carriers that give us the most nationwide coverage.
And sometimes Wi-Fi has got a bad rap, and sometimes it really is well earned, but other times Wi-Fi is worthwhile, and it might be useful to have gear to take advantage of a Wi-Fi network you come across. And if you are going out into really extreme locations, there's also a place for satellite. So those are kind of the 3 major avenues to go down and pursue, depending on what your exact needs are.
Well, let's take all 3 of those and start off with talking about cellular. And everybody's got a cell phone. Do you recommend that people carry more than 2 phones or from different networks?
Okay, so a smartphone may not always be the most optimal choice for a mobile internet connection. If you're traveling solo or you have very minimal needs, then hotspotting of a smartphone is probably fine. But if mobile internet's really going to be an important part of your setup, having a dedicated hotspot device or a cellular embedded router is going to serve you better so that you can focus on the cellular data.
And then when you talk about the alternatives of whether you should carry more than one carrier, the way we look at it is if you're jumping out of an airplane, do you want to have a reserve parachute? And if you're working online, if you're really dependent on being connected, having that second carrier, even if it's just a backup plan, can make all the difference in the world. For some people, it makes the difference between potentially not being able to work, getting fired, or being able to maybe miss out on something that's very important for them online. But other people, internet's not so critical. So if they have a bad connection, if they're in a bad Verizon zone, they can deal with it for a couple of days, as opposed to pull the ripcord and switch to AT&T.
Is there? Let's get your recommendation for the most reliable of all those networks. And I know they all go back and forth, but we all have our favorites. And in your experiences, you've traveled, does any one network particularly stand out, or are they pretty much a toss-up?
It really depends upon your location. It depends upon the data plan that you have. The carriers are constantly changing the offerings that they have for data. So you really have to look at where are you planning to travel and how important is mobile internet for you. And we tend to, personally, we choose to have both AT&T and Verizon. And
we switch between them all the
I'd
time.
say it's about a 50-50 toss-up on which one we choose at any particular location based upon speed and just the signal and quality connection we can get.
In particular, because Verizon has such a reputation in the RVing world as being, the one to get, and it was earned in the past because they were the first one to have such a big, broad LTE coverage map. But in a lot of RVing hotspots, particularly in the season, the Verizon towers are so overwhelmed that switching to AT&T, or in particular to one of the lesser carriers like T-Mobile, is like getting out of the traffic jam, and suddenly you're blazing ahead of past all the other people who are stuck in that Verizon crowd.
Now, that begs the question, T-Mobile and Sprint supposedly going to merge. I think they've cleared a couple of the roadblocks. That makes a potential third one that might not be a bad.
Correct. If the merger is approved, and as of today, it has gotten the nod of approval from the FCC, and now they're going through the Department of Justice antitrust. Those are the next hurdles to go through. We could be seeing that merger be approved sometime in June or July. If that goes through, that is going to provide a T-Mobile and Sprint's combined power, their holdings for frequencies and spectrum, gives them a huge advantage.
It'll be three giants instead of two giants and two
minors,
two secondaries. So
and that makes for competition, which makes really for better service and for better pricing, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And for us travelers who are going to more remote locations, so right now T-Mobile and Sprint, their individual holdings are so much more focused in very populated areas. They're going to have spectrum holdings that allow them to get out into the more rural and backcountry areas, which will be very important.
Yeah, with, say, somebody does, well, you know what, I'm going to add Verizon with my AT&T, or add AT&T with my Verizon account. Do they need to get then a separate data card for that if they're going to go with the Jetpack or a MiFi, or will that MiFi Jetpack work with both carriers?
So most Jetpacks or mobile hotspot devices are optimized for each carrier. So a Verizon Jetpack, it only really picks up the frequency bands that Verizon uses. And there's some crossover with AT&T, but you're going to be missing out on AT&T's key frequency bands. So we don't generally recommend it. If you want one device to rule them all, then you want to go with a non-carrier branded cellular embedded router, like a Cradlepoint or a MoFi or a PepWave.
Mm-hmm.
And where do you find those?
They're more typically sold to business customers and to like fleets of like putting them inside police cars and ambulances and stuff. So you have to you're not going to walk into a Verizon store and get this. You have to do your homework, and we've got them reviewed and linked to where you can buy them and stuff. But you can get them on Amazon. You can get them from places like 5G Store, but you have to know what you're doing. They're not really consumer-focused products.
You guys, and we will put links into to your great sites, all your resources. We'll put that in the show notes as well. So, all right. So let's just say the average RVer who really does depend on connectivity now more than ever. If you don't do much, just use your hotspot. But so you got AT&T, you got Verizon. What about the data plan? Many of us have been really stung, me in particular, with Verizon and their, quote, unlimited plan, which suddenly finds me after I do one live stream on a Sunday night being throttled or having it held back or put in the, I don't know how to explain it, but I guess you can do that better than me. What happens when you reach that limit and they, quote, throttle you on your unlimited plan that isn't so unlimited after all?
Right. So we are constantly tracking the best data plans for RVers to use as basically what we call a home internet replacement. And those are data plans that provide a lot of high-speed data. And unfortunately, Verizon's best option just retired this past Tuesday.
So everyone who's hearing this has missed out, but we tried to get the word out onto every outlet we knew about with newsletters and alerts and stuff.
But to include in your show notes, put a link to mobileinternetinfo.com/plan picks. And these things change sometimes on a weekly basis. So I'm even afraid to mention specific plans right now because even if you're broadcasting this today, it could change by the time we get off this call. But we're constantly updating that guide, and we have our top pick data plans for each of the 4 carriers listed there.
And the important thing.
Yeah, go ahead. I was just going to say, I'm going out to get an AT&T set up after this interview, so I will look at theirs as well. Looking for the best.
Unfortunately for AT&T right now, the best data plan from them, direct from them, is going with their home base unit, which is designed for home internet. And they have a 100 gigabyte plan for $100 a month, and they have had that steady for the last year.
Yes, but if you are kind of going
in an RV though, it's a home.
Oh
plan.
yeah, it is. It is.
Yeah.
It is a portable. It is on their cellular plan. It's not their fixed home base. They do certify it for mobility.
Mm-hmm. On the other hand, you were talking about the Winegard Connect T2 in the pre-show, but the to-go branded version of that, the to-go Road Link, is available with an AT&T plan that is $360 for an entire year of unlimited data with no data caps on that. So that's a great you option. Have to get the device. You have to get this big dish on your roof, this big dome on your roof, but it comes with an incredible deal on an AT&T data plan.
All right, so we've kind of walked through that. Now let's go to, we've got the data plan, we got the carrier, we got the jetpack, but we sometimes are in areas where those cell signals are pretty miserable. And that's where a cell booster comes in. What are the ins and outs you need to know about that?
So cellular boosters are an okay option. When you're really remote from a tower, they can be what actually gets you connected. But a core technology of LTE, which is what the cellular carriers are currently using, is a concept called Mimo, which stands for multiple in, multiple out. And that just basically means that our cellular devices, your smartphone, your jetpack, your routers, they have at least 2 antennas inside of them so that they can hear. It's kind of like us having 2 ears.
And when you use a booster, it is like plugging an ear and putting a megaphone in one. And there's actually a lot of situations where a booster will slow you down. And we're always trying to give people kind of a booster reality check of, don't use your booster all the time. Use it only when you really need it. And you probably don't need it nearly as often as you think. It's actually hurting your performance in a lot of cases.
And 80% of the time we find in our extensive testing, we do head-to-head testing with boosters and antenna setups, is having a Mimo antenna or 2 antennas plugged directly into your cellular device will outperform a booster.
Yep. So. And and it's often a lot more affordable to have an antenna. There's one of our favorites is the Netgear Mimo antenna, which is about $30, and it'll plug into most mobile hotspots. And you just suction cup that into a window, and it is a wonderful, wonderful performer.
And this, again, we can send everybody to all your research.
Absolutely. I have a direct link to the Netgear Mimo antenna, mobileinternetinfo.com/Netgear-Mimo.
And what we're talking about cell phone boosters, the other thing about them that people, particularly in smaller RVs, Class Cs or Class Bs, B pluses even, is that thing called self-oscillation and antennas that have to be, the outside and the inside have to be so far apart, or the amplifier and the antenna. Help us understand that in non-geek speak. What is?
Okay, so have you ever been to a conference or somewhere where someone's speaking with a microphone and they walk with their microphone in front of the speaker and you get that squealing sound?
There you go. Yeah.
Okay, that is the same thing that is happening with
the radio waves.
The radio waves. We don't hear them, but our devices do. And basically, if you're placing your exterior antenna too close to your interior antenna, that exterior antenna is picking up the signal from the inside antenna instead of from the tower. Mm-hmm. And it's that same feedback loop that we hear when we have a microphone in front of a speaker.
And therefore, it has pretty much eliminated any benefit at all that you would have gotten from
right. Most modern cellular boosters are designed to automatically either power down so that they don't go into that oscillation mode,
or they'll shut themselves off entirely.
Right. And now I know you guys are going to be checking it. We are as well. There's this newer company, this Solid RF, which claims that they have set up one that eliminates that problem if you mount it directly underneath the outside antenna. Mount the inside antenna directly outside underneath the outside antenna.
Yeah, there are ways to design boosters where you can, and antennas where you can basically have the inside and outside antennas pointing away from each other. You can do that manually when you're setting up any booster, but yeah, some boosters designs kind of take that more into account. Solid RF is doing some interesting stuff where they're actually putting the electronics for the booster, the amplification electronics, up on the roof, and so we will be getting that and testing that in the very soon.
I did the same thing, and I'm just trying to figure out how to route it all in without drilling holes. And
it's always a challenge. Anytime you're running antennas or routers and things like that, is all those holes. And we recommend, instead of thinking about just installing one device, is instead think about creating a conduit from your roof into your technology area inside your RV. That way you can easily pull wires in the future. So you're only doing it once, and it makes it a lot easier to change things out as technology evolves.
Great. Well, before we move on, we're talking about cell. Let me just see if I got the bottom line here. One, AT&T and Verizon are close to being equal in terms of efficiency and coverage areas. It's good to have both of them if you can, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, that's bottom line one. Number two, is a cell phone booster is good in extreme remote places or places where you're having a very minimal signal, but turn it off when you don't need it. You don't
always test with and without to make sure it's actually giving you a benefit.
All right, and stay tuned because there might be even another player with Sprint and Sprint and T-Mobile merging. So yes. Cellular Wi-Fi or cellular connections is one. Now let's go to Wi-Fi. Okay. Wi-Fi, as you said, has notoriously, Chris, been just a mess in terms of campground usage. Is that getting better, or are there things we can do to make it better?
Well, if the campground's Wi-Fi is not good, there's nothing you can do to make it better. So what we recommend doing is take your smartphone, take your laptop, connect to that access point right next to it.
Walk up to the front office.
If you're getting a good connection there, then you might be able to get a better connection back at your RV if you have Wi-Fi extending equipment.
And we always see people who spend a lot of money on Wi-Fi extending gear. They're all upset that it's not doing a great job. And we tell them, well, is it good up in the office? And they're like, no, it's horrible up there. It's like, well, you can't make a miracle here. It's bad up front. It's bad where your rig is. But if there is good signal up front, there is gear that will help you bring that. Basically, you get an antenna up high and bring it in over the roof of all the RVs around you, and that can make a pretty big difference.
And are you seeing campgrounds, are they improving the infrastructure behind their Wi-Fi systems at all?
We are getting more and more reports of campgrounds getting better. More campground managers are really listening to their customers that they want reliable Wi-Fi, that the RVer has changed. When we get to our RV sites, we want to be able to do video calls with our friends and family. We want to be able to stream Netflix and things like that. So we're not getting as many complaints about it, but if you rely on mobile internet, we recommend considering it a nice when it works, not something that you use as your default.
You can't count on it.
Yeah, that's for sure. Now, what about, you mentioned Wi-Fi boosters. And there are a number of products out that purport to do that. How are they? Are they more effective? They're only effective if there's a good Wi-Fi network in the first place. We got that part. Right. But are there any cautions or tips that you give us in thinking about a Wi-Fi booster?
So look for one that supports both 2.4 and 5 gigahertz, being able to pick up both, because a lot of the ones that are out on the market only support 2.4 gigahertz, which is long range, and that's great. But those are where you get a lot of saturation in your channel. So a lot of noise basically happening. And then that actually can decrease your performance.
Right. And we're actually seeing the campgrounds that are investing in putting in good Wi-Fi are putting in basically dual band networks with 2.4 and 5 gigahertz. And the 5 gigahertz is the express lane and nobody else is using it. So the 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi, when we run across it, works so much better. And most of the outside Wi-Fi gear does not support it yet. So you've got to kind of hunt to find stuff that'll do it.
How about using free Wi-Fi like at a Starbucks or some rest areas? Does that help at all? Those you can park a block away maybe at a Starbucks and be able.
You might be able to if you have the access codes. I mean, a lot of those networks, the companies are putting them behind password protection because so many people are using it without being a customer of that company. So if you have access to it, you can do that.
Or they're putting in limits where they'll only let you use it for half an hour. They'll detect your device and stuff like that. Just things to kind of keep people from parking far away. And also the thing we've discovered is almost all of those places where you'd be parking and trying to get free Wi-Fi from a block away, you probably have really good cellular at most of those places anyway, and your cellular connection is likely going to be faster and simpler and easier.
There are devices now also on the market. We see the Winegard Connect 2, for example, which is this bubble that mounts on the roof, and in it is a Wi-Fi booster and a cellular antenna, but not a booster. Talk about hybrid things like that.
So yeah, that device supports, it's got the Wi-Fi extending it. It's got 3 antennas so that it can listen to more distant Wi-Fi. And that one actually works really well. And not only does the Connect 2, their LTE version, they have a Wi-Fi only version and an LTE version. The LTE version also has a cellular modem with 2 of those Mimo antennas that we were talking about earlier integrated right into it. So it's all on the roof. There's no opportunity for signal loss coming between the antennas and the modem, which is a great thing. But the modem that's inside of the Connect T2 is a little on the old side.
Yeah, we actually really like that concept for the future, is putting all the electronics up on the roof where they can get the best possible signals and you're not losing any of the signal to the cables coming inside. So it's the right direction. I would love to see where the Connect 3 and Connect 4 end up when they, kind of catch up with where cellular technology is. But the concept is great.
So the Connect 2 is it's not a booster, but it has that multiple antennas in it.
Exactly.
Correct. It's got 2 cellular antennas.
So would it be comparable then, or a substitute? Would you still need a booster if you had that?
Not really, because to use a booster with that sort of setup, you would have to have the booster's interior antenna on the roof.
Right.
Because the modem on that device is also on the roof, and that's what would actually be receiving the better signal.
Now, I know one of the things that Connect 2, and I'm getting a lot of email from people about that, is that you can replace it with your own SIM card, because it's kind of they want you to use theirs, but you got to climb up on the roof to do that. But is there a SIM card, for example, in a data MiFi that you could take out and put in that? Does that work?
If your carrier allows what we call SIM swapping, and most carriers do, you can put the SIM card into the Connect 2 as well.
Like the really amazing Verizon plan that just went away, a lot of people were getting that plan and putting it up in their Connect 2 to get unlimited Verizon data, but can't get that anymore.
No more. They changed that. All right. So we've kind of gone through boosters. We've kind of gone through cellular. We've talked about Wi-Fi. Last area, and we only have a couple minutes here for this, is how far have we advanced in internet satellite technology? And is that
last night was a huge night?
Yes. Yeah. So SpaceX just launched the first 60 satellites of their Starlink constellation, which is going to bring global broadband with only requiring an antenna the size of a medium pizza box that you can stick onto anything. But 60 satellites, that's a lot of satellites, but it's going to take them 13 total launches of 60 satellites each before they're able to cover the US. So
that's the future, but it is. So if you want satellite today, if you're really going out in the boonies, away from cell signals and Wi-Fi signals, Hughesnet Gen 5 is the current best option. You can get speeds. They advertise 15 megabit per second down, which is incredible for satellite. You do still have the high latency, and you have large equipment you have to purchase. But if you go through a vendor that is authorized to provision for mobility, you can get trained up to actually set up the satellite dish at each location. You can't go direct with Hughes and get that provisioning though.
All right, so satellites close. We'll just say that.
A couple of years off before this low Earth stuff, because we also have Amazon and OneWeb that are competing in that space too.
Well, Chris and Cherie, you guys have been awesome. Mobile Internet Resource Center is where you put almost all of this information. You keep us up to date on these constantly changing plans. Your blog, Technomedia, and I just want to ask you to give people your addresses online, and also tell us a little bit about how you guys use all this stuff. I mentioned it in the opening, but let's talk about the boats and the different RVs and what you're using now.
So we hit the road in 2006 in a small travel trailer. And then over the years, we have grown a nomadic fleet. We currently split our time.
Yeah, so we have a vintage bus, a 1961 vintage bus that we have converted and geeked out with solar power and lithium and everything. That is kind of our desert home. And then now we've got a Bayliner 4788 motor yacht. That is our water home.
And then we just purchased a 2016 Winnebago Travato that will be our daily driver from both of those vessels, and also what we use to get back and forth between them.
Across the country.
Because it'll be across country. So we now have a little fleet of nomadic vessels.
No home base, and no home base for 13 years now.
Well, Chris and Cherie, you guys are always awesome, and we'll have to have you on even more. Enjoy the travels. Have a great summer season, and we'll see you online and out there on the road.
That's great.
Great to catch up again, Mike. Thanks.
Thanks to Chris and Cherie for that interview. If you'd like to go back and check some of the references they gave, you'll find them in the show notes for the podcast, and those you'll find at rvlifestyle.com/244. Thank you guys for watching this, and don't forget to subscribe to our podcast as well as our YouTube channel. You can find the podcast, as I said, by searching for RV Podcast on your favorite podcast app. I'm Mike Wendland. Thanks for watching. Happy trails.